Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, and this is your Cannabis Business Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about the developing road between California and Canada. On the line with us is Dan Kimmis, our CBD correspondent with Good CBD Products. So there's been a trend, more than a couple, where U.S. companies and Canadian companies alike are going up to Canada, utilizing the public markets up there, accessing all the capital they can, and then coming back down to the U.S. for expansion. And most notably, California as of recently. So they were lagging behind all the other states by at least 5% for investment. A lot of people were sitting on the sidelines waiting to see what happens. And now, there's obviously a road between the two. California having a huge presence down there. Their GDP is huge. Their population is big. They tend to lead a lot of regulatory standpoints for automotive and otherwise. So a lot of investment in California for agricultural and development products and so forth.
We've seen it with some of our forward-thinking and ahead-of-the-curve compadres, right? Some of the pals. So, for instance, if it isn't somebody who's thinking about moving cannabis via air between Cali and Canada, it's somebody thinking about, geez, I'm going to run up to Canada, get a bunch of investment capital, and come running right back down and expand my deal, right? Pretty funny.
So the Canadian Securities Exchange has drawn a host of U.S. cannabis businesses wanting to access more capital. So according to a monthly report, I'm getting this from the MJ Business Daily, there are companies that have either based in the U.S. or that run U.S. operations dominated the Canadian Stock Exchange cannabis financing deals in the first half of this year, 2019, to the tune of $878 million. So that's a 1.16 billion Canadian out of the total 1.2 billion raise. So that's a lot. And so out of that, California got 17% of that. So almost 1 out of 5.
One of the things that's always interesting about California is just the sheer physical size of the state, right? And then you mix in that population and, like you say, that GDP, right? It might as well be its own country.
Well, they got $250 million just in June. And then the next closest deal in the marijuana financing deals through Canadian Stock Exchange was Florida with $167 million. So just a few examples of the California Canadian marijuana business deals. So Toronto-based Dion Med Brands in July acquired a cultivation facility for $13 million in cash and $6 million in stock. Another Toronto-based Sol Global Investments in May acquired Northern Emeralds, a cultivation and distribution company in Humboldt County, for $120 million in stock, including $5 million in cash. Then Ontario-based Origin House was acquired in April by Cresco Labs, headquartered in Chicago, for $823 million in stock. That's all paper. And then Toronto-based Terra Ascend in February acquired San Francisco retail chain Apothecarium for $73.7 million in cash and another $44.7 million in stock.
Wow, huh? I mean, listen to those numbers, Kermit. It is stunning. I mean, certainly all paper deals, those I kind of understand. I get those. Mm-hmm. But paper deals that include, 7 or 8 figure cash? Come on. What's going on?
Right. A lot of the $800, $900 million deals that we're seeing, out of California are all paper deals with Curaleaf. So to see that actual cash is being thrown around, that's a lot more interesting. So there's more than $4 billion in recreational sales in 2019 alone in California, according to the Marijuana Business Fact Book. And so California businesses are using Canadian markets and investors to raise more money. So Canadian operators are also seeing it a way to get a foothold into the U.S. while cannabis still remains federally illegal. A lot of them are using hemp. Obviously, that's maybe a little bit better from a tax standpoint. They can write that off, whereas with cannabis, you can't do the 280E tax provisions. So there's a lot of opportunity in California. That's kind of where concentrate started. There's a huge culture out there. Obviously, 5th largest GDP in the world. So it's a huge opportunity. That's in quotes.
Yeah, I'm going to spend most of October in Cali, right? And I'm very excited. As the Talking Hedges CBD correspondent, your roving correspondent, being on the ground and seeing things first person is always interesting. And then with Cali, it's this thing of every day we get more interesting news from there. So just the whole thing of going down and taking the temperature, I'm really excited, brother.
So my California tends to lead the market. So when they have a hot cultivar or strain, Colorado might get it 6 months later. We might get it 6 months after that. So it's about a year after it becomes popular in California. I'm also interested to see when you're in Colorado, because Colorado allows vertical integration. So when the retailer also owns the growing and the manufacturing, you tend to see lower tax rates and still higher prices. And so when me and you were boots on the ground in North Seattle near Everett, Boeing's old headquarters, that's probably the most competitive place in the entire United States, maybe all of North America. There were literally stores that shared parking lots. And so because retailers are separate from producers and processors and taxes are higher and prices are lower, that means it's super competitive. And up there, when we visited 20 stores in a day, we saw prices incredibly competitive. I'm curious to see when you're in Colorado if that still holds true, since the retailers control all of the quality and pricing along the way. So transitioning into BDS analytics, they're asking if overall global legal cannabis spending will exceed 40 billion over the next 5 years. I suppose that depends on a lot of things, but the compounded annual growth rate is 24%, reaching 40 billion. That's the expectation, I suppose. Well, so last year, worldwide sales reached almost 11 billion. So it's not all of that out of reach to expect it to quadruple, considering that Massachusetts and Illinois really haven't had an opportunity to have some sales. I don't think 40 billion is all that out of reach, especially if the States Act passed. That's strengthening the 10th Amendment through entrusting states, essentially, where the federal government says it's not federally illegal, it's up to the states. And if that happens, then 40 billion is absolutely attainable. It's just a matter of allowing CBD products to go through places like Idaho and not get confiscated. And even in Canada, where it's legal, they're still not allowing topicals with THC because they're afraid of the kids getting eating it or something. But in U.S. alone, BDS Analytics predicts that it'll reach 44.8 billion in 5 years. The largest percentage that anticipated will be in regulated cannabis dispensaries across all 50 states, Washington, D.C., and the 4 U.S. territories, including Puerto Rico.
I dig it. This is the thing, right? Is the supply chain side of supporting that kind of market growth. I think it's fair to say they've got growing it down, okay? And scaling growing hard, but there's some history now. Supply chain and distribution, that's a whole other story. And watching that shake out, boy, that is interesting.
Yeah, I think we can take our cues from traditional agriculture, but breaking it down by some of the numbers, the total legal cannabis spending in regulated dispensaries in the U.S. topped 9.8 billion in 2018, projected to grow to 30 billion in 2024, and a compounded annual growth rate 20%. So a total of 13 markets will pass the $1 billion mark in total annual legal cannabis spending within 5 years. The Canadian spending on adult use cannabis is expected to grow from just under 113 million. The partial sales that were reported in 2018, I think that was just a couple of months, are expected to go up to almost 5 billion within 5 years. Growth in markets beyond North America is characterized by expanding access both through liberalization of existing medical markets and legalization of medical cannabis in new markets. Money is flowing more freely into the cannabis industry. Investment capital raised by cannabis companies quadrupled to 14 billion last year, according to Viridian Capital. The 5 largest Canadian licensed producers, being Canopy Growth and Tilray, Aurora, Cronos, and Aphria, closed out the first quarter of 2019 at a combined market cap of 48 billion.
Yeah, Canada, huh? And that whole thing of watching, the different movers and shakers, and then all of those different stock tickers moving around, right? It's amazing. I'm looking forward to going up there in the spring, brother. That's what I want to do.
So when you go up there and you check out some of your hemp folks, there's another contributing factor. The projected 44.8 billion is the expected sales spike in hemp-derived CBD products across general retail. So the market's already seen a significant growth since the first several ongoing hearings and approvals from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration regarding CBD back on May 31st. So they approved GW Pharmaceuticals' Epidiolex, which is a CBD-based drug, which probably isn't any good than Marinol. That was used for MS and other things. Marinol was terrible. I highly doubt that Epidiolex is any better for epilepsy. And they're trying to make it $32,000 a kilo, which is pretty ridiculous. Nonetheless, CBD is going to contribute to almost $45 billion. So regardless of where you're at, you're probably going to encounter a Canadian company. I've always advised that maybe regardless of where you're operating at, you look at Canada, try to file an IPO, look at an exit strategy for either being vertically integrated, merging, or being acquired, but having an entity in Puerto Rico. So you're probably going to be global anyways. The advantages of being Puerto Rico being, if you're selling to U.S.-based companies, you have a 4% corporate tax cap, 50% tax credits, and 100% tax exemption in some cases. So take a look at Act 20. And with that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is a Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out.